me is my co-host and co-founder, Sandra Johnson.
Hello there.
N.E.A.R member, Carl Johnson.
Evening to you.
And I'd like to welcome our studio audience. Hello, studio audience. How are you? Good to see all of these smiling, happy faces here.
That applause is not canned. They're really here in the studio with us.
That's right. They are really here. It is authentic.
2 dozen of them.
We got the real thing.
I'd like to start off briefly by reading a fan email, which we do appreciate. Hello, Keith and Sandra. I recently listened to an interview you, Keith, did on Hauntings Radio with Rod Shelton. As always, Keith, you are a true inspiration to me, just like I watch every one of the N.E.A.R internet broadcasts, and I wish I was there to ask questions or just witness you in action. Thanks again for doing everything you do. John J. Rialto, New Jersey. Well, thank you, John, and that's the second fan letter we've got from him, so we really do appreciate it very much.
We really do. We really like the feedback.
And you have an open invitation to come and be part of our studio audience anytime.
Anytime.
We'd love it. We'd love to have you
New Jersey is not that far away.
That's true, depending on the traffic.
Traffic, yes. Could be a factor.
With no further ado, I'm going to introduce our distinguished guest this evening, a very, very talented illustrator, comic book illustrator, and also a local historian. Jason Mayoh has illustrated several books which he's compiled into this one book, Tales of Rocky Point. Now, those of you who are familiar with Rocky Point, those of you who are indigenous to Rocky Point, will really, really appreciate this book. And we've got some newspaper articles, interviews he's been on, and he really gets around. He's a local celebrity, and if you've never heard of Rocky Point, you will be thoroughly familiar with it by the time this show is over. So let's join in welcoming Jason Mayoh.
Jason Mayoh, Jason Mayoh.
Mr. Rocky Point himself.
His celebrity will only increase after this broadcast.
That's right.
See, here we have the famed House of Horrors on Rocky Point. Well, why don't you start out by giving us a little history of Rocky Point and how you became enthralled with it.
Okay. Pretty much it opened up in 1847 by Captain Winslow, and it started out as a Sunday school outing, as a matter of fact. Quickly it expanded to a full-blown amusement park, operated pretty much up until 1995 when there was an auction. All the rides were sold off and the park sat there for 10 years. So I sort of stumbled upon photos of what it turned into, and it was kind of shocked to see it kind of turned into a surreal horror type setting.
Right, exactly.
So you said it started off as a Sunday school outing. Do you mean like it started off maybe as more of a carnival type of amusement?
Well, actually, Captain Winslow would bring boats over and bring school children, and it was just they'd serve clam cakes, have clam bakes there. I think they had circle swings out in the ocean.
Oh.
And then it just continued to expand and grow from there. So how would you describe Rocky Point in its heyday, which we all remember as children, of course?
Well, I went there in the 80s, and you know, it was a pretty fun time. You had rides like the Skyliner, the House of Horrors, the Corkscrew roller coaster, the Cyclone roller coaster, the Flume, which is a water roller coaster. You know, they had clam cakes and chowder. A lot of live bands played there.
Right, right. A lot of famous live bands played there, and actually Sandra and I performed there in theater.
Really?
We had a lot of, you know, local things, local talent going on there too. So, quite, you know, in our lives, because Sandra grew up right near there.
A few streets away.
Yeah.
Yes, we got all the traffic.
I think Keith told me you actually might have worked there a long time ago.
I think everyone who grew up in Warwick as a teenager when Rocky Point was in full swing, at one point or another, worked at Rocky Point.
Particularly people who lived in that Connecticut Tidewater area.
Right, right, exactly.
And I remember several years ago, before they totally leveled it and sold off all the vestiges of the rides, Sandra and I walked through the wreckage there. It was like going forward in a time machine, going to the future from what it was. It was just leveled, and
Really,
there were some structures still standing.
Like you said, surrealistic. You
Yeah.
stepped into a
Do you-
time pocket and...
Do you really think it's wise talking about our trespassing experiences, excursions?
I didn't see the signs.
Not until you were leaving.
Yeah, on the way out I said no trespassing.
Well, a lot of people have gone through there, but of course it's received a lot of notoriety recently because of the recent film, You Must Be This Tall.
Right, You Must Be This Tall by Dave Betancourt,
Right.
which I actually helped out, worked on the film.
Uh-huh.
And that was one of the cool things. We got to kind of explore it legally, the remains of the park.
Well, that's good. And there was, in my notes, I have something about student filmmakers in August of 2006 went in. It was in, I remember reading it in your book. Can you talk about a little of what they discovered, their experiences
Well,
that you know of?
throughout the book there's sort of an evidence section, some photo section. I'll say they found certain things that might have led to the park being cursed, or evidence for the park being cursed over the years. One of the weird things that I discovered was a cave at Rocky Point. Was
Oh yes, the
one of
famed cave, yes.
Yeah, that was a strange thing. It was actually, I saw a flyer from the early 1900s. Was actually a cave. You didn't know what was in there, but they promoted, come see the ancient cave at Rocky Point. And then I'd heard that Warwick police officers actually, after the park had closed, stumbled upon cult activity in this cave.
Right. It was known for a lot of cult activities in the years after its closing, and you know, that's another reason why it might be cursed, or why it drew cultists to there, because of the legends associated with there, which there are many. You know, and it's funny the way it plays such a part in our entire New England history. For example, kind of a little known fact that during the Lizzie Borden murders, well, the day of the murders, and this is, you know, goes along with the premeditation, the Fall River Police Force were having their annual outing at Rocky Point here in Rhode Island, Warwick, Rhode Island, while the murders took place. So I guess somebody knew
That's
ahead
right.
of time, the police won't even be here. They'll be at Rocky Point
That's
in
right.
Warwick, Rhode Island. So, you know, that's something. And you have to wonder if they came, some of them must have come home that day. Did I miss anything? Anything happened while I was gone? You know?
Somebody planned ahead.
Right.
Well, you know, one of the things I heard about the cave was they actually, the first owners found Indian arrowheads, trinkets, stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
Removed them from the cave, so that's why some of the old employees believe that that was how the curse started.
Right. Okay. So tell us, how have you gone and taken it to the next step in your illustrations and your books about the curse and how it's taking retribution on people? And you've got a whole saga here, and all of us can relate to this, and this is wonderful. A talented, some of these illustrations, they're just wonderful. They'll blow you away, you know, especially if you're local. You're
Thanks.
just a very, very talented illustrator. And so tell us about your storyline there.
Well, one of the strange things I never realized is how many strange things actually happened over the years.
Right.
Numerous fires, mysterious accidents.
Which largely covered up at the time, of course.
You know, after I did the first one, I said, well, let me try to research and see if there's validation for this curse. There were just tons of strange accidents, one death involving the Skyliner ride.
Oh, yeah, right.
So I tried to,
1970, right?
yes,
September 1970.
where a worker actually was sent up to the wooded area to fix the ride, and somehow it mysteriously turned on, crushing him to death.
Right.
So, you know, I was just kind of taken aback by all this strange things, so I tried to illustrate them and kind of add some fictional elements for the sake of storytelling.
Right.
Well, maybe you can sort of give us your view on what's fiction and what's reality here. One thing that I found interesting was something about gypsies placing a curse on,
That-
on the park? The gypsies that used to tell fortunes?
That was another variation on the curse story, that the mid-90s, the owners fired all the gypsies that used to tell fortunes on the Midway, and they sort of, on their way out, put a curse on the park, which led to the auction and the park's closing.
For some reason, gypsies are supposed to be particularly adept at placing curses. It might have had something to do with it.
Oh, yeah, could be, could be. Yeah, that's one explanation. I think it's everything together, you know, but the park itself kind of had a mystique. I remember it having like a mystique, and this was the thrill. Of course, Sandra probably wasn't as much of a novelty to her growing up, but us, you know, Carl and I growing up in Scituate, North Scituate, that was like, wow, we're actually going to Rocky Point this weekend, and you could feel the thrill and everything. And of course, during the summer months, they constantly advertised it. They had all these commercials on TV. You remember them?
Of course.
Yeah.
Take me out to Rocky Point.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Sandra, what about the main song there?
What?
He wants me to sing the song.
Because you do it so well. You did it so well.
Well, with her theater background,
Come on, you can
do it justice.
Please forgive me, audience. Come with your family. Come with your friends. It's a Rocky Point tradition, 'cause it's summertime again. Rocky Point.
That was awesome.
It always brings tears to my eyes. It's beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you.
That
Never
was
be able to
wonderful.
lift
Thank
my
you so
head in
much.
public again.
Thank you so much, Sandra.
Okay, now that horror show is over, let's go on to more.
House of Horrors. My favorite ride.
Cool.
There is something about the Viking. Actually, there's a lot
Yeah.
about the Viking
Oh, yeah,
in
the
your books. Can
famed
you
Viking.
tell us?
Let's explain who the Viking was.
Well, this actually opened up in 1963. It was known as the Castle of Terror for years. And when I went there, it was called the House of Horrors. But the Viking was actually initially inside the House of Horrors. And it was rumored that over the years, different people punched it and tried to vandalize it. So they moved it to the outside exterior. And the big rumor when I was a kid was that someone got scalped on the ride. Of course, couldn't find any newspaper articles about it, but nonetheless illustrated it as it did happen.
Right.
So the Viking sort of plays a role in all three comics, where he's sort of in the background, and then he's kind of the reason that the park is cursed in these books.
Uh-huh.
Without ruining the story, I'll say that the Viking sort of relates back to the cave.
Right. Right. And anybody who remembers that, you remember, I'm sure a lot of people in the audience remember that, the big Viking, he was hacking, he had this big, wielding this big battle axe, and this dragon he was hacking to pieces. It's all bloody and blood all over the place, really gory.
Pretty gory, yeah.
You know, and as far as the scalping goes, well, at least it's not in color, so I guess I can show it. It's kind of, you know, just take a look right there. Rip.
Of course.
It's just, you know, it's just.
Just don't show that horrific last page. It's pretty
Yes.
graphic for a graphic book.
The Viking actually, supposedly after the scalping, he was taken down and put into storage somewhere in the park.
Uh-huh.
And one of the rumors was that he was put into the big house, which used to be an employees used to eat lunch there.
Yeah, the big house, yeah.
Turns out that that was one of the places that burned down after the park had closed. So coincidence, who knows?
The thing is that, of course, they had the expansive parking lot, and when the park wasn't open, of course, you know, the parking lot would be filled when it was in season, but you had this expansive parking lot, and a lot of people, I think, Sandra, didn't you learn how to drive there?
Right.
I think, yes, I was one of many who learned to drive.
Right.
in
Yeah,
in
that
the
would be
Rocky Point
yeah, if you
parking
wanted
lot, yes.
to teach somebody to drive, you took them down to Rocky Point, you had that expansive parking lot, and you didn't, you know, have to go on the main road or anything like that, and that was the perfect place. And,
So you learned to drive while singing the song?
While singing the song, yes, I'm multi-talented,
Very
or
good.
something.
On another rumor that I heard, actually, right next to the parking lot on the way out, there's a patch of woods, and actually an old manager told me that whenever a ride broke down, they would bury it in the woods.
Yes.
They actually
Yeah,
called
that's gone over in your book.
Yeah.
That they
The
bury
ride-
the rides.
the ride graveyard,
Yes.
which is featured in issue 3.
Bury them because they were assumed cursed?
Well, that's part of the lore.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Let's go back to the cave and how that relates to the Skyliner.
Okay.
Now, it used to be tradition, of course, you weren't supposed to do it, but you go, you know, it's like a ski lift, except it doesn't stop anywhere. It just went around like that, and of course, a lot of the teenagers would dare each other, we're going to jump off at the top, going to jump off at the top. You know, I see people nodding, they remember this, that they used to jump off the ski lift, and there would be the cave right there, right?
Well, supposedly, yeah, once you jumped off, there was a secret party spot that
Right.
a lot of the teenagers hung out at. And supposedly the cave was located somewhere near that Skyliner jump-off spot.
Uh-huh. And there was something mysterious about that cave, too, wasn't there? Supposed to be...
Well, along with, you know, the sort of weird cult activity after it closed down and the relics found in the early days, one of the other stories in the 80s was that I should recap by telling the story of the 1938 hurricane.
Right, right.
6 monkeys actually managed to escape Rocky Point during the hurricane, and it was rumored that they lived in the woods for years. And actually, several newspaper reports of little old ladies sort of being scared to death by seeing these monkeys rummaging through their trash.
Yeah.
So I sort of took that lore and made the monkeys sort of come back as undead zombie monkeys in the
Yes.
in the 80s.
That's what I was showing there, the monkeys, and they get into the schoolhouse, they get into
Very
people's
disturbing.
attics, and they start jumping on people and
Yeah.
throwing their droppings at people from telephone wires. And
Ew.
all sorts of, well, I know that's what people.
That's what monkeys do.
Yeah, that's what they do. Exactly.
Did that give rise to the Rhode Island Bigfoot sightings? They had a spate of those, I think, in the
I think they're a
70s.
little smaller,
Was
but-
it in Warwick?
Not in Warwick.
The apex ape, yes.
Yeah, there
Warwick.
was
Apex
one, you know,
ape,
and,
really?
In
Well,
Warwick.
that, yeah,
Like a
that was the
monkey-like
first.
thing
That
back
was the
in, like,
original one.
1975, the Apex 8. Yeah, it was some kind of simian attack. Now, there's this illustration, and I know you probably can't see it too well here. That's the partiers. The teenagers jump off and they find the party animals there with that, like they hoped. And I just wanted to ask you, now, you say this is unintentional. Looks very much like a self-portrait there. There's yeah, I know you can't
Could
really
be,
see it
could
that
be.
well, but the young man that's standing right here, where my finger is that a self-portrait? Come on, you must fess up. Is that a self-portrait?
I am a big Thin Lizzy fan, which he's wearing the band Thin Lizzy. So
Right, yeah.
Were you, I don't want to embarrass you, but were you also
Too late
a
for
big
that.
Kiss fan?
Kiss. Well, I'm a big rock and roll fan. So
Classic rock, yeah.
a lot of there's a lot of T-shirt, a lot
I
of
noticed
band
the
shirts.
Kiss T-shirts.
Yeah.
I'll fess up and admit that I was a
Yeah.
Kiss fan as well.
Well, I've got pictures of you that, you know,
Yeah, I
dressed
don't
up
want
like
to talk about
Kiss.
that. You don't want to talk. You don't
Do
want to go there.
Would you like to sing any Kiss songs for
No,
us? or-
not right at this moment, but thank you for asking.
right.
What I
Janis
would like to do,
All right.
we're not going to do any Janis Joplin, but I wanted to just talk about this letter. It says, paperwork found in the rubble and debris after the House of Horrors was demolished 2007. And it has Rocky Point letterhead. It's dated July of '84. I'm not going to use any names, but dear Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, it is with my deepest regret and sincerest apologies that I write this letter to you. The recent unfortunate circumstances that befell your child on the House of Horrors ride is both tragic and inexcusable. On behalf of the management and staff of Rocky Point, we extend our deepest apologies for his accidental scalping and have taken the necessary actions to rectify the situation. The Viking statue, which malfunctioned on Saturday, will be taken down and put into storage. And it just goes on and on and on. And I'm looking at this, and I don't know if you can see this, audience. Probably not a very good view of it, and I have my fingers on it. But I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking to myself, is this for real? This can't be real.
Well, I'll say this, when people ask me what's real, what's not, it's sort of, I like to say 80% of the book is real and 20% is sort of fictional for the sake of storytelling. But that being said, you know, there were so many different rumors about Rocky Point, so it's kind of like, well, what's real, what's not? I'd say get the book, decide for yourself.
Right.
Yeah,
But are all
it
your
was very
stories-
shocking.
yeah. Are all your stories based on actual legendary attached to Rocky Point?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. A lot of them are actual things that did happen there that I was surprised. You know, I'd always heard that the yo-yo snapped, that someone was thrown from the flume when I was a kid. Those were the big legends. And then sure enough, researching all this stuff at the Providence Library came up with the actual newspaper articles. So.
Right. Well, we were always hearing about the Wildcat. Now, the Wildcat was a roller coaster that it looked like it was popsicle sticks put together.
I was just going to say the same thing.
Right,
And
yeah.
it sounded like popsicle sticks as the cars would run over it. It was just...
I never
And
got
you
a
were on
chance to go
top.
there, but
I remember as a kid, and you really felt the wheels going off like half the track as you were going. And we were always hearing, you know, if we had friends, you know, somebody flew off there, somebody
Yeah.
flew off there. You always hear that somebody just went flying off there. And I'm sure it did happen. But,
Well, that was the big attraction. We may not survive this ride.
well, that's it. That's it, you know.
well, that Wildcat story, if you watch the bonus footage for You Must Be This Tall, there's actually an old employee, I think his name is Walter Bailey. He tells the story of how
Any relation, Father Bob?
the Wildcat actually came crashing off the tracks and hit him.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
He survived
and
to tell
he's
about it.
Yeah.
alive to
So-
tell the story.
That was the thing. I couldn't find a newspaper article about it, but you get it from an actual employee that used to work there.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So let's, back to your illustrations. I want to compliment you again on them, that any of us who remember this can really, really relate to the cars on the rides. And, you know, you've got Dracula there and everything. You've got the reptile, the Wolfman, the Gillman. They were all on the backs of these cars as you went along. And you know, you always wanted the Frankenstein car or the Wolfman car. I want it this time, and
Yeah.
go up and you describe it as you come up. You know, you hear this clack, clack, and of course you illustrate it like that, clack, 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 almost like a mini roller coaster. And then you start going in, and boom, and you hit the doors, and you see the big spider.
Yep.
The big spider used to come down, and it smelled horrible in there, like always, like industrial, like grease and everything.
That was-
That's what gave me the creeps, that
Yeah.
horrible smell.
And you
smell.
mentioned that. What's that smell?
I described it in the book as motor oil mixed with musty death.
Yes. Yep.
Ironically enough, when I was working on the first issue, drawing that panel, it was over the summertime. I had the windows open, and I sort of got a whiff of that smell. It was coming back to me. I don't know if it was
Brought
just a
back
coincidence.
memories.
Or,
Yeah.
Came back to haunt you.
I regret that we never went through there taking a tape recorder, because, you know, back then we didn't have the like little mini cassettes and everything like that, so it would have been difficult. But I just remember the sound so clearly, it all echoed and everything, and you know, the hisses,
Yeah.
you know, those groans and everything like
And I
that.
remember once the effects ceased working, they were never repaired. They just stayed like that.
Yeah, yeah.
They went down one by one in the
Yeah.
Castle of Terror.
Yeah, and you right. You go in one room and there's the blade for the sawmill.
The
There's
saw
a woman
lady.
being
That was the
sawed
first
in
one
half.
that ceased working, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Till it
And-
really wasn't quite as impressive.
Right, you know, and you had the madman trying to get out of the jail, and the person hanged, and their heads popping off, and the bloody neck, and everything like
Yeah.
that. And but it's all like you know, fluorescent and lit up like that, very very dark. And,
But
Yeah.
the sounds remain, the recorded sounds, the background sounds.
yes, you can tell what an impression this made on us as kids, but because we're so enthused about it. But
that was the strange thing about the House of Horrors, too, is after the park closed down, it was pretty much the last building there that had some stuff still in it. Like a lot of the cars were still on the tracks, and all those murals were still there.
right,
And the rumor was that it sold for $1,000 at the auction, but whoever bought it didn't take any of the stuff out of it. So
no, yeah.
another fodder for the curse.
Right, right. I remember in the movie Ed Wood, and they go in the spook house. That made me think of the House of Horrors, very
Yeah.
similar to that. Let's go in the spook house, and very similar.
And that's a cool scene.
Yeah. So, let's see, you got so many others.
I want to know, What horrors did you find about the shore dinner hall?
Yes, that's
You
what I
said
was
the-
going to mention, the
Shore
short dinner.
Besides
dinner
the
hall.
clam cakes and
Well-
chowder.
Couldn't find too many reports of, no one died from an overdose of clam cakes or anything like that.
Right, yeah.
But, you know, got to explore that building, and it certainly is creepy, and there's pictures of it in there. The floors were
Yeah.
really unsafe and a lot of water damage. But the weird thing about that is there's a long pile of wood from the start of the building to the end of the building. And we were sort of exploring it for a good hour, and then as we were leaving, I noticed, something about this wood looks familiar, and it was actually one of the flume cars. It was
Oh,
flume log.
Inside the shore dinner hall?
Yeah,
Ah.
it was number 13.
Oh,
I was
wow.
like, that's strange.
And you just happened to come
Interesting.
across it.
Yeah. So there's pictures of that in there. So that led me to the final story of Flume Log 13. And
Wow.
supposedly that was the one that
Yeah.
riders got ejected from.
Delicious chowder and clam cakes, and I remember you were always lucky if you got to the beginning of the table, or the middle, but if you were on the very end, they'd be passing it down. You know, they had these big cauldrons of clam cakes just piled up high, and of course, by the time they get to you, everybody's touched them and looked through them and put them back, and I want this one, I want this one. So by the time that to you, they're handled with care, you know. so-
Second-hand clam cakes.
Right, second-hand clam cakes, or maybe 10th-hand clam cakes and everything. It's a woman falling off the skyliner there, you know.
Oh, see if you can find the picture of that tower. Keith and I were looking through this
Yeah.
today, and
And we're
there it
almost
is.
out of time, too.
I just want to. I had
No.
never. I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, that was in the early 30s. I think
Yeah.
it didn't get destroyed in the hurricane, but they took it down after that because it was almost toppled over. That was known as the observation tower.
But it was damaged in the hurricane.
Yeah,
That's
and
my
that was like a
understanding.
landmark back in the day.
Just think of all the famous people, like not just Rhode Islanders, but all over the country that did go to Rocky Point. And, you know, I've always heard that the first telephone to the White House, the first telephone call
That's
was
true.
made by Alexander Graham Bell himself from Rocky Point. And
Mhm.
it just plays such a large part in our history. And, I mean, we could go on and on about
I know.
history.
Certainly in our personal histories as well.
I know,
Absolutely.
because we can all relate to it. Well, in our closing moments, Jason, anything you'd like to say about what's coming up with you and your illustrations? Are you sticking with the Rocky Point genre, or what?
I'm going to stay away from Rocky Point for now, although there's
Okay.
more stories. But yeah, I'm putting together another Rhode Island rumor book, which ranges
Oh, good.
anything from rustic drive-in to hot wieners.
Yes.
Urban myths about
Urban
Rhode
legends, so-
Island and
Yeah.
just
You'll have to fill me in.
folklore.
Right. And anybody
Cool.
who lives out of state who grew up here would just love those books, you know, just to reminisce and
Yeah.
take a part of home with you, you know.
Cool.
Well, I want to wish you luck in your illustrating career, and
Thank
you've
you
done
very
a
much.
wonderful, wonderful job, because we just,
Indeed.
we look at this and we look at these illustrations and, you know, it just brings it back to us,
Cool.
you know, and especially the movie, you know, You Must Be This Tall, it just so much reminiscence, but hey, good luck with your
Well, thanks so
career.
much. Thank you very much for
Thank you,
having me on.
Jason.
And
It
I
was
hope
fun.
you come back, you come back and join us when you have that new book about Rhode Island legends.
Absolutely.
look
That's
forward to
gonna be
that.
great.
Thanks for having me on.
And
You're
thank you. Studio audience, thank you so much. Take care. God bless. Remember Rocky Point.
And I'm not going to sing again.